This is Brett Bumeter from the Zeta Mining Show, and today we're looking at episode 30. Are you a thought leader? Why or why not? And I'm joined with my co-host Warren Whitlock. How are you doing, Warren?
Howdy.
Hey. So I was just mentioning to Warren offline, and I apologize up front. Someone started up a wood chipper in our neighborhood about 5 minutes before we went live. And I think it's being filtered out of my microphone, but I can hear it, so I apologize if I sound a little loud today. It sounds like we're going through a war zone or something. But anyway, today we're talking about the concept of thought leaders. This is something that can be a concept, it can be a business model or a marketing strategy. There's a number of different ways to approach it, so we're going to kind of discuss it and see if we can talk about some of the examples and kind of go from there. And one of the things that kind of kicked off the topic today, although it comes to us often, is I have a friend and client who lives out in Warren's neck of the woods who is kind of living this. I'm not sure it's something that he set out to do, but he is an anchor person for CBS, but he's also a voiceover actor, and he has become something of a thought leader in the voice acting community through his blog and through his ever-present social media activities. He's one of those folks, kind of like Warren, who is constantly engaging on every social media channel, site, app, what have you, that comes up. And I don't know how either of you do it, but a lot of time spent awake and probably not that much time spent asleep, I'm guessing. So anyway, speaking of thought leaders,
I don't think it's that bad, but
I wouldn't say it's a bad thing.
it used to be that having a job like anchorman on TV was, pretty good, and that was your life, that was your career, that's what you did. But it's especially interesting to see that somebody who has depended on that system working to be aware and working on what goes beyond that, because when they get robots to read the news at the natural voice, they're not going to need anchormen anymore. They still need commentary, they still need reporters, like that, the human elements. But reading the news is used to be very much honored profession, because there was only Walter Cronkite and a couple other people doing it. Now it's a fairly common job, and a job that doesn't have the brightest of futures. So if they don't have control, and plus he's in voiceover, so if that doesn't have enough to satisfy you, then boy, we all ought to think about whether or not we ought to be thought leaders.
That's right. Well, my friend Dave, he started to kind of diversify several years back. He had been working as a news anchor for quite some time, and he moved more into the work of doing some voiceover work, narrating audiobooks, ads, and educational materials and things of that nature. So it started off as a diversification process for him to not be as reliant on one source of income. But I think it rapidly grew, and he started in an era when social media was just getting going. Right around the time YouTube and Twitter were first taking off, and I think he's taken a number of those skills that he learned growing his new business and voiceover work back to the newsroom as well, and so it's he's been able to make a bit of a synergy out of it. But speaking in terms of specifically thought leaders, in general, maybe to take a step back and kind of start to define what a thought leader is, a lot of times a thought leader is someone that corrals around a community, might be working in an industry or on a topic or just around an idea, and they engage people with the conversation. You might think of this as like a moderator of a panel or something like that, but it's one that goes on constantly. And so they're getting people engaged, they're getting them to talk. Sometimes a thought leader can be an expert, but a thought leader does not have to be the preeminent expert. They usually have to know enough about the topic be expert enough to lead the conversation or to get people engaged, but they don't necessarily have to be, the Stephen Hawkins of physics or something like that necessarily. So, and the business model sometimes comes into play as a person develops as a thought leader and as their audience grows and grows and grows on that particular topic. Sometimes they can branch out and they can offer products, they can sell books, they can sell training courses, they can provide training, or they can connect people to those books, to those services. Sometimes as well, by establishing themselves as a thought leader, it distances themselves a little bit from the people that are just starting off in the business, and that can help a person in any given area establish better pricing, show the premium for what they're doing, or at a very fundamental level, just through the examples of their work and their discussions, it can show that they know what they're talking about, and that kind of cuts through the first level of trust. So, Warren, I know you've done a lot of work in this area as well, and through some of your other shows and work, you've interviewed dozens, if not hundreds, of thought leaders in a number of different industries. So, with the definition kind of aside, let's get into the topic of why someone should consider it, or why maybe they shouldn't, if there is such a case.
Well, let's first of all back on the definition. I think my definition of leader is the person who gets in front of the parade. You do have followers, but a leader is not somebody who is exalted. A king is not a leader position. You're not in an ivory tower. You're not exalted. This kind of usually a leader is a person who is actually serving the crowd, and so thought leader is a great term. I have a lot of problems with some of these buzzwordish kind of terms that become popular in usage. I think thought leader is one of the good ones because you're thinking. If you're thinking and you're out in front, means you're looking at the future, you're staying up to date with things. That doesn't mean, like you say, it doesn't mean you're the best or you have some authority that somebody put you in. Best as I know, no one offers a certificate in thought leadership. There's no way to go to school for it or anything like that, which is to me is great because it's merit, but it's really who serves the industry best. And there's no limit to how many you can have or what it is. And so and that brings up the other thing about expertise. I used to have a saying. We had shirts for our business that said expert on them. Hand them to a new hire. They go, well, I'm not an expert. And I said, well, we were working with laser printers. I said, here, watch this video about how laser printers work. It'll take about 15 minutes, and then you'll know more than 99% of the population. I think expertise is, again, something that's very hard to measure. Now, there are some places you don't want a doctor to say he's expert at something because he thought about going to medical school. But in a lot of things, a lot of industries, voiceover work, for instance, you don't have to have the best voice. You have to know what's going on in the industry to say obviously somebody who makes his living getting paid to use his voice knows how voiceover works, knows mechanics. He's received a check for it. That makes him a professional. And I love the idea of a professional being somebody that's received a check. So, it doesn't mean you're any good at it.
Right.
So add those things together, and I think, everybody ought to look at being a thought leader, and not to be a fake or go beyond what you really know. Because I'm fond of saying when somebody says, well, can you answer our questions? And I said, yes, I'll answer any question you want as long as I can use the 3 little words that always get me out of any trouble. I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know. I'm okay. So that's a lot of my work in the last 10 years has been doing this sort of thing, taking an unknown author and turning them into something usually nonfiction, usually somebody that understands their industry. And one of the interesting things today is to write a book. does set you apart. Because if you take the time to write a book, even if you get help writing the actual words of the book, if you're going to go out and go to the trouble of producing a book, you're somebody who has put some effort into understanding that industry, that niche. I would never recommend that somebody say, "Hey, you can be an extra dog trainer. Here, buy my dog training book. Put your name on the front of it, and you're a thought leader in dog training." Do you ever have seen a dog? No, that's ridiculous. That's not how it's done. But if somebody's been, doing dog training as a hobby, as a profession, as a part-time job, anything that they know what's going on with the industry, and they set out to write a book, the person of average intelligence can collect enough information to be way ahead of the general population. And I like books as a metaphor for talking about this, because you can write a blog, you can set up a blog and write a blog post without very much effort at all. But a book is, of enough length that it's there. Once we get past the obvious, don't be a fraud issue, if you're at all sincere in doing it right, you're going to have some expertise by the time you get done writing the book. It's also why the dummies books are so popular, because most people want the very basics at doing something. I, for one, don't like the idea of buying a book that identifies me as a dummy, but apparently I'm wrong there, because most of the population loves buying a dummy book, and I've seen inside them they're generally a good book, which is an interesting way of doing things. The basics are what people want. If you're giving a speech to 500 people, and you've given the speech, for years, the same speech over and over again, guaranteed when the crowd comes up afterwards or steps up to the mic to ask a question or whatever, they're going to ask the basic questions that you've answered 1,000 times before. And the expert is the person that knows how to do that, that knows how to explain what they're doing to the general population, and thereby leading. And, again, thought leadership is a little bit different than just saying I'm going to be an expert, because it's saying I'm going to go ahead and try to break new ground and stay at the cutting edge, or at least report on what that cutting edge is.
Right. So there's as you're saying this, I'm getting the sense that there's kind of a progression. So if you start by writing a blog, let's preface this by saying you know something about what you're talking about. You've got some experience, or you're not coming at this, straight out of kindergarten and writing about whatever the topic is. But you have some experience, you have some knowledge, and as you start to write a blog article, you are sharing your thoughts. And then you continue to share your thoughts, might be over the course of a month, might be over the course of a year, might be over the course of 6 or 7 or 8 years. Mm-hmm. And after a while, a person might look back on their blog and say, I shared a lot of thoughts. I'd like to organize those thoughts into a book and maybe bring some of those together. Or maybe as they look through it, they realize I really nailed it for here, here, and here, but I've got a few gaps. And if I just fill in those gaps and answer some of the questions that I just never quite got to on my blog, maybe people already knew it or what have you, or I thought they knew it. Once I fill in those gaps, now I've got a complete thought that I can share in the form of a book, an organized thing. And at some point, you can move into the realm of speaking potentially, or what have you. But that whole effort, sharing your thoughts, organizing your thoughts, being out there and present in the middle of the conversation. You may or may not lead that conversation every time, but being a regular and leading it occasionally eventually starts to establish you in this thought leader position. And it's not, like you said, it's not something that you get a diploma for, not an honorary degree as a thought leader. It's something that you have to earn from showing up and doing good work by sharing good thoughts, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, well, and I think actually to call yourself a thought leader, to call yourself an expert, a guru, anything like that is, even as any kind of a leader, you don't call yourself a leader. You call yourself by whatever that position is that you have at whatever time. You act like a leader, or expert or guru or whatever it is. You act like you're going to be the person that's going to find out the right answer for it. Again, I don't know is a suitable answer.
Right.
What they say that Henry Ford was on trial for, or he was suing somebody who called him an ignoramus, and he said, "Well, in my office, I can push a button and have, any of 50 people come and give me the answer to anything. Why should I fill my head with useless knowledge?" And and today we have Google. If you're the person that can organize and get the right answer for somebody, that gives you an idea to be a leader. I think the way to step out and get a little bit, get recognized for it is to make sure that there's something where you're breaking a little bit of new ground. But I love your method there that you talked about, going from blog to speaking to books, because I've seen people who start off with a blog saying, "I'm new to the industry and I'm going to record what I learned and share with you." And again, that's what people want to know. Now, if you say, "I am the leading expert in this industry," and you start a blog with no experience, you'd be lying. But if you start the blog by saying, "I've worked this many years in this and decided that I want to have a little bit of a change and go explore this, and I'm going to record my thoughts here," doesn't take very long and you're a thought leader, because there are so many people that haven't done that. And I guess that's one of the arguments we get into with people sometimes, is they say, "Well, how could he be an expert at blogging? He's only been blogging for 1 year." Who cares? It's not about length of time. It's about what you bring to it. And no, none of us have been doing a lot of this stuff we do today for very long in terms of years. And again, you're not doing this to impress the other people that are doing it. So if I want to show that I know as much about blogging as you, that's a waste of time. If I want to show that I know more about blogging than the average person on the street, yeah. Just last night I met a very successful businessman doing phenomenal things. Wish we had time to talk about that, but that'd be another 30 minutes. But in our conversation, he says, "So what about you?" He says, "Well, I've done this and that, and I'm known for having written the first book about Twitter." And he says, "Oh, Twitter, I've never gotten into the social media. Boy, I wish you could help me." And more or less said, "Where's your beginner's course? Can I buy it?" And I thought, I don't have a beginner's course. Maybe I should. But as I'm thinking about that, he instantly said, "There's somebody that knows something about it. Let me ask." And I look at a lot of the people who, we joke about calling themselves a social media expert because they stuck that on their tag after they put up their Facebook page. It's on their business card that they understand social media. Well, actually, if you understand people, you understand the right thing to do in social media, understand networking, you understand how to network online, it's not that part is not that difficult. Whether or not you put expert on your business card, I don't like that, no matter how good you are. I don't need to be impressed by that person. That guy who I talked about that I met last night, he needs to know that this is somebody that's going to focus on teaching him to do things right. Now, he may delve into it a little bit further and say, "Hey, I just met the guy who wrote a book about Twitter. Do you know him?" And they go like, "Well, no, I've never been on Twitter." Well, maybe that's not your expert you should hire. There are some other factors in there. But I've met people who are actually very good at using social media, and they've not done very much at all. The reason they understand it is they understand whether or not it's ads, and they're putting ads on social media. They understand lead generation, and they're using it for lead generation, or they just understand people, and they're on there having a conversation. So that's the line between just another person and becoming a leader. It's deciding that that's what you want to do. And you've given us a great recipe for it. Start a blog right away, be honest, and whether you know or you don't know or whatever. And then the other thing I think we should mention is shine the light on other people. If you're going to be a leader, then you go and find who the best people are and you feature them. So and boy, I've had people that say they know nothing about Twitter, to people who think they're social media experts, people who really are social media experts. All of them, when I get interviewed and talk to those people, I find out I can give them something. It didn't take. I'd say about 100 interviews in on after I wrote the Twitter book, I started realizing that I didn't need to I didn't need to have an agenda. I am not selling a course on how to kill it in Twitter. Um, though considering it, a lot of people want that now. But back when I was considering it as an expert, whether or not I was going to make a an income off of that, was like I didn't want to say how to get a lot of followers, how to set up your account. To me, that's not how to actually engage and help people. And I got to a point where I said, "Boy, would you like to interview me? Well, then go ahead, ask me a question. I'll give you an honest answer." And honesty and authenticity won out over prepared. Meanwhile, I've seen people give a speech, especially panels of industry experts, where everybody has 10 minutes of
Of the session time or something, right?
yeah, 10 minutes
Here's
is
your 2 minutes,
time, but
go.
they've got 43 slides and everyone's heavy with text. And there's really no reason to even be in the session because you could just read the whole thing and you'd get exactly what they're reading you. And so the discussion, the human part, is much more important. That's why we go to conferences, is to meet people and get more of their essence than just them reading slides. And so and it doesn't have to be complete. I think we just talked about this in a whole other subject about blog comments and what Liz Strauss taught me and taught my audience was, don't complete the post. Be honest, be authentic, give the information there, be as complete as you can, but don't worry about it. And in before, when we used to think of what goes into a book or in a presentation or whatever, going back decades, that was the expert needs to put it all in there. We need to have that as a reference point, and I'm going to buy this book and learn how. Today I read a book, I expect to talk to the author. If I watch Dave on TV, I want to be able to send him a tweet and know that he gets it. I'm not asking that something in a broadcast situation, those people can't always respond to everything. There's just too many people. But I want the illusion that when I write to you, that you're going to at least be able to process the thing.
Yeah.
What Bill Gates was reading and answering all his own email until he told a reporter that, and everybody started figuring out if you wrote to Bill Gates at Microsoft that he'd actually read his email, and it got to be overwhelming. I've seen the staff. I've been to Zappos and seen the staff handling Tony Hsieh's mail. Zappos is quite known for excellent customer service, and he teaches that. He's very open about talking to anybody that he can, but and he's now reached the point in fame where he can't do that. He has a staff of multiple people reading the mail and then answering you saying, I'm helping Tony with his mail. And if there's something that needs to get passed to him, then they do that. I've seen emails from a staffer at Huffington Post saying, Ariana wanted me to tell you this. And generally that comes off as genuine, although that could also be fake. But that's the idea, is today you don't want to fake that. You want to say, even if I need a staff of 10 people, I'm going to talk to everybody that are leading. And it also opens up the opportunity for a lot more people to be leaders. I may not be the person that's famous for this, but I can be a thought leader in that I know what the mind of that person is because I know them, and I know this person. I can combine it together. And in some cases, me, a guy sitting here talking to you may be able to give you a much better answer than trying to reach out to the 6 more famous people.
Right. I think one thing that you were just describing kind of points to the fact that to be successful as a thought leader, after you go through the sharing your thoughts, organizing your thoughts, corralling people together, there also has to come a point in time where you reach a level of awareness that you are a thought leader. You may not print it on your business cards. You may not say, hey, I'm Joe Blow, the thought leader on XYZ. That's not what we're saying. But you do need to start to become aware of what you're doing to a certain extent, of the fact that you have organized your thoughts, you are sharing them, and that you have some amount of influence, or maybe not even influence all the time, although that can be part of it, but connection with the people that you're discussing this with, or the people that you are helping to grow themselves. And that awareness is kind of the key that then helps you turn this into something where you can drive forward, whether you drive forward in training people through an educational product, or speaking at conferences, or writing additional books, or just driving people to develop a better mousetrap and getting them thinking in new directions or new ways on whatever it is in your particular area. I think that awareness has to be part of the key.
Yeah,
before
that's really important. It's something that I struggle with because I don't think of myself as humble, but I try to stay humble and realize I don't know everything. If life teaches me anything, it's that I don't know everything. And then if you have any doubt, have teenagers and they'll tell you you don't know anything. So
I'm growing
really
a copy of them right now.
keeping you in reality. But and that's the thing. I mean, I can go to a picnic with the relatives, and I'm just another cousin. And I try to keep that in mind. And sometimes it's fun. And sometimes I think I've got a huge ego, and then other times I go like, yeah, I really ought to own this thought leader thing a little bit more. And that awareness is, I think it's awareness of wherever you are and trying to keep authentic about it no matter who you are. I know some of the most influential people to me, when I meet them, they're just, a regular Joe and they're okay. Somebody that gets too carried away with that then becomes a diva and it's a mess, So yeah. I don't think there's a right answer to that because, you know what, maybe the diva lifestyle, it makes them happy. So I'll let them do what they want. But I always said, the reason why I'm able to get a lot done is because I associate with people that can do that. When I do well, it's because the group that's helping me has, supported me in everything that I'm doing. I couldn't do it otherwise. If I need an answer for something, I tweet and I get an answer. The world is there, and I think nurturing those relationships is, to me, is as important as anything. And I suppose that's a good leadership trait, is to make sure you have the relationships with the supporters that are going to help you.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking as you were saying that there's probably a big difference between a thought diva and a thought leader. There may be a place for thought divas to a certain extent, but if you thought you were a diva, odds are you're not really a thought leader. I'm kind of guessing.
Well, it's interesting because if Kim Kardashian makes a comment on just about anything, there are people that are going to listen and pay attention and take it serious. I hate to say that with a Kardashian in the same sentence, but it's true. You say, well, I want to know what that person said, and still the positions of authority. Obama has never conducted brain surgery, but he's president. If he says this is what we ought to do to change brain surgery, I'm going to listen to what he has to say, because maybe not listening would be a peril.
Right. There can be a difference, I think, between leaders in various areas and then the people that are the thought leaders in a particular niche that might help fill in the gap for that area.
And today what we're talking about is that area where it's not authority or celebrity or position that puts you in that position, that makes you able to do it. It's where you gain that, and by gaining it, there's nothing like authentically knowing and doing your best to do it. And if you go to see a brain surgeon and there's something, that guy's not afraid to consult a book and find out about it. And in fact, I want to see a doctor that is going to research my case rather than just say, well, I think I read something back in 97 about this. I want him to be up to date and paying attention to it. But it's interesting because a lot of the times the culture of what we expect from a doctor, we don't want him to go to a computer terminal while he's talking to us and look something up on the medical website. We want him to know. If he's having to consult WebMD to talk to me, I'm kind of worried. That's somewhat of an illusion, though, because when I'm rational about it, I want that guy to be looking at that stuff. If he's ignored that there's a new drug, a new procedure, new research on my condition, I'm in trouble. So being a thought leader who admits to not knowing something is great, again, with the exception of some of those illusions where you don't want to, come out and you don't want to lead with, I'm a nobody, I know nothing.
Right. Well, I think you're bringing up a good point, and I would back up just a half step and provide an analogy. I always tell my teenager and my soon-to-be teenagers that in life it doesn't necessarily matter if you are right or wrong. It matters if you can prove you are right. But as I'm thinking now about the concept of leadership, I think it also matters if you know you're right. So if you can prove you're right, but you don't know you're right, if you're a brain surgeon and maybe you've got the proof there, but you don't know if that's the right answer, you may not jump in and start cutting when you need to, or convince somebody. If you don't know you're right, you may not be able to convince the patient that they need to have the surgery. So, and that's kind of a leadership skill that comes in, that you have to be able to communicate effectively the correct information at the right time and be able to back it up with substance.
That's interesting, and now I'm thinking about it more, and yeah, there's a lot to it, because one of the objections to this, that anybody who has this objection stopped listening 15 minutes ago. But it's like, oh, they're just making that stuff up. They don't really, not only do these guys not know what they're talking about, but I shouldn't have to do anything. I'm a dynamite coder, and my code stands for itself. It's a place where I hear it quite often. I'm a great engineer. I'm good at my job. Why should I have? Well, the thing is, you've got to communicate that. For instance, in the doctor example, a good doctor has to be studying all the time, but then it doesn't mean that he needs to say, I won't ever make a diagnosis without looking it up first. No. If you're in an emergency room, you want that doctor to use his expertise and do the best job he can. That behind the scenes, he's got to do the studying and find out what about it. Nice thing about a lot of other professions, I don't need to say, I am the very best dog trainer and I have this award, or I have a certificate of thought leadership. I can go ahead and say, I'm learning about this. And then I guess the other thing that I think we ought to move on to, that I've forgotten about, is that if you're going to be a thought leader, one of the things is you interact with the other thought leaders, and you're able to, you want to get to a point where you're able to carry on that conversation. Now, if you're just starting out and you're talking to the person that's been doing it for 20 years, that may be, I've been studying your work, I've got this question. Most of them love to answer a question about their work. You know what they're working on now. It's just like any other good networking. You stay up to date with that. And then at some point, you're able to say, I was talking to person X over here, and he said that maybe we shouldn't have WordPress themes anymore. And, now I can bring in another expert and talk about that, and you as a WordPress theme expert have your own opinions on that, and we can discuss that. And at some point I say, well, I'm equal to you, I know that. Again, it's back to the awareness. I don't think it limits you to being the person that says, well, I've gone out and studied, I now know more than you. It's like, I'm a colleague, I know that I know that I know things, I know that I don't know things, I know that we both don't know things, and here's some new ideas. And I know from discussions with you, quite often I give you what I think is a new leading edge idea, and you say, well, that won't possibly work, and tell me why. And other times you say, well, that could work, but how about this? And so, and to get to that point, I think that's the thought part of it, is getting to the point where you actually are able to add to the knowledge base. But that could be as simple as, I'm going to introduce person X to person Z, and I become a thought leader because I'm there in the conversation. And so again, authentically getting to that point where you can carry on a conversation about what it is you're a thought leader on. So
I would posit a couple examples maybe as kind of a leap-off point from that. And these are actual celebrities, but they're celebrities that didn't necessarily start off as thought leaders. One would be Sanjay Gupta from CNN. Happens to be a neurosurgeon, so he's expert in his field as a doctor and as a specialist as well. But he covers in-depth health topics, and he provokes and pushes the conversation around health and medical practice and things like that. He also happens to be a reporter, so there's some functionality going on, but that's adding, that's him sharing his thoughts, and then there's the times when he's leading those thoughts. Another one that comes to mind, someone that's not necessarily expert in any one thing, would be the guy Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I think he actually is maybe an even better example of a thought leader, someone who has gone out, traveled the world, gained a lot of experience, and shared a lot of thoughts on a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different jobs, and is now leveraging his organized thoughts on different topics to help drive people to fill some of those, not necessarily dirty jobs, but difficult to fill technical jobs or difficult jobs maybe that are available throughout the states. He's working to make sure that, at one time they might have been called blue-collar jobs, but these are technically complicated jobs that take a special person that you don't necessarily find coming straight out of a university. There's not necessarily a career path to gain experience in them, and so he's trying to expose this topic as the thought leader, someone that's seen some of these complex jobs out there that might look ugly, a casual observer looking in, but can pay it very well.
And then what does that do to us talking about our jobs? And what we do is that we're looking at it in a different way. And I think that's one important aspect of having that discussion and being the person that's willing to talk about it. If I'm a neurosurgeon and I'm not a reporter and I do neurosurgery every day, good person in society, but for one thing, I know that I'm not gonna be able to talk to him about diabetes. It's like he's used to cutting things in the brain.
Right.
And that's what he does. And it's not that he doesn't know, because I imagine any neurosurgeon knows the basics of all anatomy and could do other things. He went through all those. Yeah, he went through all those rotations. But to me, personal opinion is like, I'm going to feel like that's kind of a boring guy unless I want to talk about neurosurgery. Now, if it's Gupta, then it's like he's got a more generalist knowledge where he can talk about anything. Am I going to pick him if I need surgery? I don't think so. Probably a lot of people would. If he offers his services as a neurosurgeon, a lot of people think, well, yeah, that's the guy I've seen on TV, and that's fine. So we don't want to mix those things up. They're two different things, and I think most of us need some of each. We don't want to be all reporter and never do the surgery, and we don't want to be surgeons that do that. And I'm now working with people that have been very good at what they do, but sheltered, and want to come out and share it with the world. And for the most part, once you get talking to them, and they get past it's common. Everybody says, I don't want to be known. I'm doing a good job. That's what I don't need to go out and toot my own horn. Truth is, they want to share what they know. And once we get underneath that, the facade of what this is all about is I'm going to get famous. Yeah, we have egos. We like to be recognized. Blah blah blah. But really, a thought leader is somebody that says, I've got some experience and I want to share that.
Yeah, it requires a little bit of getting out front and doing, showing, talking about it. Like you mentioned, it can't be all reporting, it can't be all doing, it can't be all teaching either. There's probably the third leg of that particular stool. A thought leader might teach, they might report, they might do, but they can't do any one of those things exclusively. They need to mix it up and make sure it all stays balanced. But the main thing is to be out front and guiding people or the conversation.
Bottom line on this, should you be a thought leader? You can decide not to, that's fine. But today, anybody who's even considering it, I say, yeah, go for it, because if you're going to get hired in a new job, if anybody's going to ever research who you are, and they're going to look online, they're going to look at your LinkedIn profile, they're going to, they'll find out what you're talking about. Do you have a blog? And if you're not there, they just don't know. So it's not an idea of manufacturing that like you have to have a resume. No, if you're well employed or work for yourself, you don't have to have that resume up there. But at the same time, not just potential clients, but just the general population to know who you are. And so, I think it's part of your reputation now is to have something like that. And you certainly don't want to get to a point where if somebody searches for you online and all they can find is somebody that's mad at you about something or disagrees with you
Right.
about politics or something like that. So it's got to be managed at some point. It used to be if in the old days, the average person didn't meet more than 150 people in their life, and they never travel more than 50 miles from where they were born. It was very common for people to live through their life being a great blacksmith or doctor or farmer or whatever and not interact with anybody else. Today, the whole world's connected. So you've got to, it's out there. You can choose to ignore a lot of it, but if you're going to embrace it, you might as well be somebody who does manages it to the way you want it to be.
Yep. Now I think that's a good point, and I think that's probably a good place to wrap up, unless there's something else that we've maybe
No,
missed.
that was meant to be the closing statement. So that's it for today.
Well, with that in mind, I'd like to welcome anyone that's watched this or tuned in, subscribing to Zeta Mining on YouTube, youtube.com/Zeta Mining. You can also find us on Twitter, and you can connect with myself or Warren at Warren Whitlock or at Brett Bum. I'd love to hear from you. Questions, responses, replies, ideas, topics, or suggestions for future shows. Have at us. Just send us something through any of the social media channels, and we will consider it for a future show. We thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon.